Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, How to Bring Your Live or In-Person Events Online. I'm Nicole Jones from TechSoup, calling in from not so sunny San Francisco, California, at least today, and I'll be your host. So super glad to see so many of you here today. This is definitely a timely topic, and we've got a lot of great content to cover. So in the next hour, we're going to answer the most frequently asked questions and also just cover some topics related to online events. But before we do that, we're going to cover a little bit of housekeeping on how to use our webinar platform, Global Meet. So all lines are muted, but you can ask questions at any time by typing them into the chat box. And if you lose your internet connection, no problem. You can just reconnect using the link emailed to you. And lastly, you'll receive an email with this presentation, recording, and links, so you can go back and watch anything that you might have missed and also share this content with others. So there's going to be a lot of great resources coming at you, but don't worry about having to memorize those. Again, that's going to be in that follow-up email. So this is definitely here for you to get engaged with us. We do these webinars to provide, lots of great content and a variety of materials, especially content related to the current situation we're experiencing with the pandemic. So there's going to be, as I said, lots of opportunities to engage with us and ask your questions throughout this webinar. So you can do that by chatting your responses within. So actually, we don't have a chat box for this particular webinar because we have so many attendees, but instead, you can respond to or ask questions in the Q&A panel of the webinar platform. We're also going to ask a couple poll questions, so you'll see a survey tab in which you can respond to those. And you can tweet at us at TechSoup using the hashtag TSWebinars. We really appreciate your engagement during this time with us. And I'd love to also know where you guys are coming from. If you want to share with us in the questions where you're dialing in from for today's webinar, that would be great to see. You can see some of the places where we are here at TechSoup. So we're a global network bridging tech solutions and services for good with more than 1.2 million nonprofits in 236 countries and territories benefiting from TechSoup and recognizing TechSoup as their unique resource partner. And to help make that possible are the more than 100 corporate donors and providers of software, hardware, and services who have chosen TechSoup to create and grow impactful in-kind donation programs. You can check out all the great offerings from our partners by visiting the nonprofit tech marketplace at TechSoup.org/get-product-donations, and we'll be sure to share that link with you in the post-event email. Okay, and now the exciting part, on to introduction. So once again, I'm Nicole Jones. I'm a content producer here at TechSoup, and I'm joined by Stephen Davidson, who will be assisting our chat today. And on today's webinar, we're also joined by our speakers and partners at Tapp Network. And at TechSoup, we rely on Tapp for marketing support, such as email marketing, landing page development, and more. They work with a lot of mission-driven organizations like ours, and they provide digital marketing and social media services needed to deliver compelling content at the right time, on the right channels, and to the right audience. So super excited to introduce today's speakers. So we have the co-founders of Tapp Network, that's Joe DiGiovanni and Kyle Barkins, and they'll be joined by team member Whit Godden. So a little bit about who they are. Joe's a marketing veteran, having worked with global cause-related campaigns for WPP, Oprah, Pepsi, Johnson & Johnson, AARP, American Heart Association, eBay, and the U.S. Census, just to name a few. And he's got a passion for leveraging his 30 years of experience to bridge marketing and technology gap in the nonprofit sector. And Kyle has more than 15 years experience as a user design expert and has been directly involved in the launch of more than 2,500 websites from Fortune 500 companies to professional athletes. And at Tapp, Kyle has been responsible for the strategy, development, execution of the marketing campaigns and successful website launches for organizations of all sizes. And he's obsessed with using technology and data to optimize end-user experiences which provide positive outcomes for the organizations that he works with. And then Whit. Whit began his career in marketing in the startup world as a marketing and experience director at Exploding Kittens, managing and executing large experiential projects for gaming conventions across the U.S. and Europe. He's been working with Tapp Network for close to a year, helping build client relationships, and as a Los Angeles singer-songwriter, creating genuine experiences, both live and virtual, is one of his passions. So thank you so much for all three of you joining us today. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to you.
Great, Nicole. Thanks for that great intro. Hi, everyone. This is Kyle, one of the co-founders here at Tapp Network. Tapp is TechSoup's marketing technology partner that strives to empower organizations for good. Essentially, your vision is our mission. And we're speaking to you today about the challenge many of you had or are facing as a result of the coronavirus and the impact it's having on organizations, specifically how it has caused event cancellations or the need to pivot and how your organization engages. So I'll turn this over to Joe to give a bit of background on what got us here.
Wait, Kyle. Sorry, guys, this is Whit. Before we get started, let's just take a minute. It's been a pretty heavy and stressful last few weeks, and if you're attending this webinar, you're likely facing or already have canceled or postponed your spring event. So in order to stay positive, I thought I'd sing a little tiny song I wrote for us, if that's okay. So here we go. Tapp Network, we're Tapp Network, TechSoup's trusted MarTech agency. Tapp's here, no need to fear, to provide you with our expertise. If you have a broken strategy or want to make your website pretty, Tapp's here, TechSoup's premier friends in marketing technology. All right, now I think we're good. Joe, take it away.
Awesome. That's one big scary reality check of what happens when you work from home 24/7 for 3 straight weeks. But we're really glad everyone's here. And who would have guessed we'd be hosting a webinar with over 2,000 people from home, and who knows how many dogs, cats, and kids are listening in today. But let's get down to it. Events are the lifeblood of nonprofits. 41% at least marketers believe that events are the single most cost-effective marketing channel over digital advertising, email marketing, and content marketing. And the question is, how do we combine all those into a virtual environment? And a lot of things have been canceled. N10's been canceled, 5Ks, fundraisers, big events, galas, even community events, small and large. And this is really how all of us, all the nonprofits, engage the community and raise funds. So today, we just want to kick things off with a poll. If you go into the polling section, first question is, have you had an event you were organizing canceled because of COVID-19?
And that poll is out. Yep, we'll start answering it. Just to know, you have to navigate to the surveys tab to be able to see it.
Great, thanks. And as you're filling that out, there's a second poll too of how many of you have reformatted your live event to be an online event and pivoting accordingly. So it'd be great if you could fill those 2 polls out. And the positive here is that, we were heading in this in this direction pre-COVID anyway. And the data shows that going virtual for your events is something our busy audiences want and trending toward. And it really helps us diversify our funding opportunities and channels. And in addition, it really helps modernize our websites, our marketing, and our technology. So now is the time to catch up and really embrace technology cost effectively, if not free, in some cases that we'll go over today.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, so let's look on the bright side, right? So there are some amazing benefits to online events. I'll just quickly kind of run through these. First, they're flexible. They can be tailored to your business needs. I mean, if you can think of an event you can host in person, the odds are you can host it virtually. And that's what we're here to show you guys to do today. Secondly, they're cost effective. I mean, with virtual events, there's far less overhead. I mean, think about venue rentals, food and drink, and other overhead costs like travel and housing. For online events, all you have to really pay for is possibly the platform, your promotion, and potentially speakers. Online events are also scalable. There's absolutely no maximum to capacity. You can build it on a large, like go on Facebook, for instance, on Facebook Live. That also means that you can expand your reach and promote brand awareness and possibly provide more sponsorship value. Here's an interesting statistic. 30% of people are more likely to speak to a person in a virtual booth. So that only indicates that online events offer themselves to be engaging with tools like polls, as you guys are filling out right now, Q&A sections, which we'll have later in the webinar, live chat. Unfortunately, it's not open on this scale. And even a downloadable resource section for your attendees can fully engage with your content and can integrate into social media. On a fundraising front, there was a 50% increase in mobile fundraising transactions in 2019. So hosting online events means that people are definitely ready to donate online. In addition, they're environmentally friendly. The costs of hosting an in-person event aren't just monetary, they can be environmental. In 2018, there were 170 million individual people who traveled for business events. Think of the carbon footprint that makes on our globe. And then also factor in all the waste at in-person events like water bottles, paper, plastic bags. They're also reliable. You know, we're talking about these in-person live events have been canceled due to a pandemic, and we're looking at an online event as being a reliable substitute. And lastly, they provide an opportunity for comprehensive analytics and reporting data. If you've ever tried tracking attendees at a live event before, you'll know it's incredibly difficult. But with online events, your ability to track an individual's engagement and follow through with statistics and data is important and easy with online events. All right, Kyle, why don't we take it off to the 4 key steps?
Thanks, Whit. I think the first step we're going to have to all do is learn that jingle. I'm going to be humming that for the rest of the weekend, I'm sure now. So thank you for that. Today, we're going to talk about the 4 steps to success: planning, choosing your platforms, integrating your channels, and then taking action. So from the planning stage, the first thing to think about is, can the event be translated virtually easily, or is the format going to need to change? How are you going to track attendance? Does your organization even have the bandwidth or the staff or the volunteers and the capabilities? Is this something you can do in-house, or would you need to bring this out of house? Oftentimes, when you're talking about large event planning, you're going to work with vendors anyway, so there's going to might be a shift in who that vendor relationship might be. And then, are your attendees going to be able to attend or engage with minimal friction? What we're doing here is trying to make sure that you're not asking them for a heavy lift or requiring too many tools or downloads or whatever it might be that they need virtually. Step 2 is going to be identifying your platforms. Tools that are going to, at the minimum, serve the purpose, right? So we'll need to update or create, a new website specific to your event if you don't have one that exists, possibly like a landing page just hanging off the site as it is now. You're going to want to be able to accept registration. You're going to want to promote, confirm, and engage through email marketing. You want to probably give them an online or a downloadable event guide or agenda. So what you would have in person as a brochure, now you can host that online, and that's always a great compliment, regardless if you have just a live or just a virtual event. You also want to be able to engage with them virtually, so think social media, chat, video, anything you can do to stay engaged so you're not rambling on like I am at this point. You want to be able to collect feedback, and then, of course, the main purpose of the event could be fundraising or donations or connecting. Step 3 would be integrating those channels. So how do you make sure that your social media integrates with registration, which integrates with your email, and then ties that back into social, and then we can track attendance and so on down the line. So think about your existing tools, add any additional integrations you might need, like your CRM or your website or your email marketing list. And finally, step 4 is taking action. So the real meat here, make the announcement, socialize before, during, and after your event, engage with your attendees besides just on social media, or even the people that aren't able to show up. and then do your fundraising, collect donations, hold the contests, have your silent auctions, whatever you can do to take action and engage with the audience. To kick it off today, I thought it was good to, showing what the impact of something like this. If you follow these steps, what you can look forward to. So we have a case study from a local organization here in Delaware that I'm going to outline it in detail, that we're confident that if you follow these steps, you'll see some of these encouraging results, like the Fusion Racing Hoppy runner. So Fusion Racing is actually a race timing organization here in Delaware that manages races and events for a number of local organizations, but they're also reaching out nationally across the United States. They have an annual 5K every year in April. They call it the Hoppy Run, or the Hoppy 5K, and that was going to be canceled because of this pandemic, along with a number of other of their events, but this is the first one that they hosted this way. On average, this event usually gets between 200 to 400 runners, I believe. And then there's like accompanying in-person events, so, gatherings afterwards and beforehand. But there was going to be a lack of engagement now because there wasn't going to be an in-person piece, which is what they were concerned with by hosting, a virtual run. So they pivoted, though, right? And they launched a virtual 5K, and they attracted people that had moved away. They noticed that people that had run the 5K in the past that weren't here locally signed up for this virtual 5K. They also were able to go a little bit viral by having that be shared out through social media. The way they were able to capitalize on this was launching this through Facebook and through an email marketing program about the change of their event. So anybody that had already registered for the event got emails, but also now their whole list that was, maybe not local, or people that had joined before, or just their social following was now able to sign up for this. They used a platform called Run Sign Up, just as they would for their live events. So they didn't really have to change much there. And they were able to use that to collect those, the registration. So now they had the information about the people. They were able to communicate with them. And then they used Facebook, a free program that to create Facebook groups for this run, right? So now they could stay in close contact with everybody, and then they could kind of create some camaraderie and some competition right within that Facebook group. And once they launched it, they were able to start tracking the mileage that people were logging in a Google Sheet. So, a program they already had, they didn't have to go out and buy something, get some license, just made it easy. And they were feeding people from their run sign up right into the Google Sheets. They were tracking those people in Facebook, and then people had access to submit that, their mileage, either through some of the common apps like through an Apple Watch or by just, the good old-fashioned honor system. But what we liked about this, some of the keys to success that we saw from this was they were able to span more than one day. So now it wasn't just a Saturday morning 5K. This went over a 2-week time period that they ran this, and they were able to communicate with people, again, across the country. They reached 34 different states, people in D.C. and in Japan. They had 685 registrants, and they had a total of over 20,500 miles logged. So what I really liked about this and we wanted to showcase was this is proof that you can do this with a limited budget and resources that you probably already have in place or that are likely available, but just getting a little creative and planning it out and running it in a different way. So I'm going to turn it over to Whit, who's going to get us started and cover that step one, that planning stage.
Great. Thanks, Kyle. Yeah, so step one is the planning phase, and there are 5 key steps that you want to take within the first step of planning. So before you jump in, we're going to take a look at what you need to do first. So first, you want to consider what the original format of your event was. Was this a multi-day event with breakout sessions? Was it a race or a competition, a fundraiser? The second thing you want to do is to revisit your objective or objectives of your original in-person and live event and make sure that all of your creative and logistical decisions are keeping those in mind. Are you looking to provide education, do sales and networking, continue fundraising? The third thing you'll want to do is take an inventory of all the communication pieces you already had created for both pre and post and during events, things like invites, on-site signage, pamphlets, and brochures, because a lot of these things don't have to go to waste. They can be transferred and translated into digital files. The next thing you want to look at is your sponsorships. So you might want to review your sponsorship packages or contracts and be prepared to provide new value for your online event. Has your audience grown? Are the ads more actionable because they're digital and users can go straight to these sponsorship sites? And lastly, just take a brief look at the people that you're going to need to pull off your new event and what type of staffing and support that you'll need to have. So once you've laid out the roadmap, I've seen a lot of questions asking about the platforms coming through. That's when you can get started on selecting the right platform or multiple platforms that will make your event a success. So I'll hand that back over to Kyle to review what some of the great platforms are.
Yeah, great. So yeah, once your plan is in place, it's time to select the platforms, as Whit said. On this slide, we've included some of the examples of some of the great platforms that are available and some of the ones that we're going to mention today. There's links provided, so this slide deck will be shared in the follow-up email today. There's links provided in this table, and each of the logos are linked as well. A lot of these are going to take you right to any specific nonprofit pricing or discounts that are available right through TechSoup. But if you have any questions on these, please feel free to reach out to us if you want to know what the best use case is for some of these or how they might work together. And don't forget to browse the TechSoup catalog for some of these nonprofit donations as well. So when you choose your platforms, it's important to select the ones that are really going to fit your specific needs. There's probably not a one-size-fits-all solution, so there's tons of event packages and platforms and things out there that are going to do maybe 70% of what you need, but then you might need another platform to do 30%, but that also does 50% of what you need, and it's kind of figuring out where they work well together. Some key platforms we know you're going to need, though, for almost every event are going to be, one for event management and registration. So think of something maybe like Eventbrite. You're also going to likely need something for fundraising and engaging. So it could be something like Classy, it could be something like Little Greenlight or Give Lively, but something that is going to allow you to collect some information, collect some funds, collect some donations, whatever it might be, and then engage based on that. So when you're picking this platform, also think of something that you can use socially, or maybe even like text to donate, but another way to kind of keep that going. And then you're definitely going to need a database or a CRM to track all these registrations and users. Sure, these donations are going to have email addresses attached to them, but you're also going to want to know where else that person lives within your ecosystem. You want to know if they attended. You want to know what else they did, before, during, and after the event, and it's great to log that in a CRM. And then finally, you're going to need a communications platform or possibly multiple platforms. Again, a lot of these we think you probably already have in place, but just some examples on here to choose from. When you're looking for new tools, though, be sure to pick those that fit your specific needs for this event. So, we talked, do you need registration? Do you need to be able to screen share? Are you going to have people dial in? Is this going to be kind of all virtual, where something like the Hoppy 5K, there was no screen sharing needed, but they needed a way to communicate with the audience, so they did that through kind of in real time through Google Group or through Facebook groups. If you do screen share, though, you're going to need multiple rooms, so look for tools like Zoom and others that allow you to do breakout sessions. Do you want people to dial in from a computer, or do you want them to just be able to join from a phone? Post polls, have a chat, Q&A, things like payments and donations, anything, just the different needs you have for your organization. But we think it's helpful to create like a checklist and kind of go through that and start to compare these different platforms. And then if you had one of the other things that we always like to think about too is if you had a printed platform or a printed program or materials that you were going to distribute at your live event, is there a way to make that digital and then make that more engaging as well? So if you can share those pieces out through social media, maybe host them on like a landing page, you're going to have more lasting impact from that. And a bonus is if you have it virtual, digital, you can actually track a lot of that. So you can see how many people came to that virtual brochure and how many people clicked on the different sections within that brochure. And you can start to track that over time and tie that back into your CRM. So keep in mind that these online events are definitely going to be a bit more evergreen. So much of the content that you're going to use here too is going to be evergreen as well. So it's going to be something that you can share out through social media, something that can be repurposed again next year. So when you're choosing a platform, you're going to want to make sure your platform has the ability to possibly archive these or create a recording, for example, of the event, or just create something so that you have something to point back to and something to share after the event and use long term. Once you've got your platforms picked out, step 3 is going to be to get these platforms working together, connect your systems. We call this integrating. We call it integrating channels. And by doing this, you can really make them work for you. It's going to be super important to keep things flowing, especially on this tight timeline. Maybe you're forced to pivot quickly because of this COVID virus, or maybe it's a 5K and you have to pivot because of the weather or whatever it might be. And technology can really be your friend here. And we say integrate, we're talking about like having data pass between the systems so that if something happens in one system, it doesn't need to be manually copied over to a spreadsheet and then uploaded or translated onto another computer or something like that. So look for systems that kind of integrate out of the box so that you can tie together. Many of the systems that we just talked about in the last slide have integrations out of the box, and that's kind of why we showcase them. But like Eventbrite, for example, it integrates with Facebook, and then Facebook events, and then it also integrates with Zoom. So you could kind of create that whole ecosystem just using those couple of platforms and tying that back into your CRM. HubSpot as a CRM comes with hundreds of integrations out of the box, and they feed data back into or allow you to automate things from right within HubSpot. If your systems don't integrate out of the box, though, you can look at tools like Zapier. Zapier allows you to connect things between many systems. So set a program so a new registration comes in through your website form, push that registration to Eventbrite, for example, and then you can set another automation that would say, new Eventbrite registration, sync them into my MailChimp list, and then send them a welcome email or something like that. You could get a little bit more basic and say, okay, new event form, sign up, push them into Google Sheets so that you can kind of track those. So if you don't have a CRM set up yet and you're trying to run this on a short timeline, something like that could help you get through until you've got the time to really pick that and set it up. So obviously there's more complex needs here. There's probably unlimited possibilities in reality, but the gist of this is just to get everything connected so it's working together for you and being more effective and efficient.
Great, thanks, Kyle. So, we're looking at planning, platforms, and integration, and now what it comes down to is taking action. And if you think back to 1965 at the Newport Folk Festival, Dylan shocked his live event folk music audience and announced that he was going electric. And sure, 100% of his audience wasn't ready for this. He even got booed, but he ultimately forever changed live music as the rest of the musicians of his era played catch-up. So today, nonprofits need to go electric. They need to go digital, and they're going virtual, thanks to COVID and just the changing times. So now it's an exciting time to be a leader in your sector as well and really embrace going online. So if you are changing your online event to a virtual platform, you need to communicate effectively and quickly. So number one, make your announcement early as possible to avoid uncertainty, to avoid lawsuits, and just to make sure that everyone is up to date, your sponsors, your attendees, your speakers, your vendors. And send an email and alert as soon as your event is canceled or moved to online, letting audiences know what to expect, even if new registrations are not available. And communicate the changes and how to participate. Tell them early what is needed, what to expect. Reach out and stay in touch via social to communicate, as well as attract new audiences that weren't originally attending. So driving attendees back to a landing page is then critical as well. So whether you're reaching out through social, through email, even on your website, if you're throwing up a banner to announce that you're going virtual or online, create a landing page quickly and send folks there that has all the details. And you can start communicating that way as well. And that can be constantly updated. And all along, the most important thing is engage your speakers and sponsors and even the event attendees along the way as your virtual event evolves. Let them become part of the solution and the announcement, and that will really help drive attendees, drive participation. It could even increase the funding as the funders become involved in your decision making. So the next slide, back up one. Here we go. Here's a case study of the Census. And this is a really good example of switching events last second online. So the census is a big deal, and Census Day, April 1st, was one of the biggest events for the state, as a complete count would generate over $3 billion in funding for the state. So launching with a live event, that's what was going to happen April 1st. It's going to feature the lieutenant governor, the governor, senators, mayors, and business and community leaders, all at this huge event. And we had a whole army of door-to-door ambassadors who for 90 days were going to hit the streets, almost like a 3-month ongoing event to get people to participate in the census. And then boom, within 48 hours before April 1st, we found out the state got shut down. We couldn't do the live event, and the ambassadors couldn't go door to door, and they were grounded. So we had to pivot. So we launched a big meeting with the state capitol and all the government officials, community leaders, and business leaders on Zoom. So that was our first virtual event, getting all the stakeholders involved to decide and strategize and plan what we were going to do, going back to our earlier slides, and then really choosing the platforms that we were going to use moving forward. So what we did was we rallied the business leaders, the community leaders, and the government leaders to live stream from their homes on Census Day. So we sent an email toolkit and a social media toolkit to over 100 influencers, like I said, leaders, and we just made it super simple. And we had all of them from their homes, from their living rooms, do 30-second to 3-minute live streams on Facebook to talk about the benefits of filling out the census. And just by doing that, we wound up reaching 750,000 people, and there's about 900,000 people in the state. That's how successful it was. And looking back, if we would have just had that big, large event at the state capitol, we probably would have reached a few thousand. So there's still a lot of work to do, but sometimes a bright light at the end of the tunnel is when you do go virtual and you can engage other audiences and combine all their efforts together. It doesn't just have to be one big live event. You can take all these micro events like Facebook Live and put them and leverage the reach of all these influential people together. And by doing that, you can get even a bigger audience. So planning, using the right platforms, integrating, choosing the best way to announce, and pivoting can be super important when you want to switch gears and announce what you're doing with your new event. There we go.
Great. Thank you, Joe. Before I speak to the socialization of an online event, I did want to address the specific question that came through that I thought would be helpful to answer. Someone asked about hosting an online event, and there may be some audience members with disabilities that won't be able to engage. So we just wanted to reemphasize, that the platforms that you guys need to choose, they're not going to be a one-size-fit-all, and there may be some creativity that needs to sort of happen. You always want to keep your audience in mind when planning and selecting these platforms. So it may take a little bit of research. There's likely some accessibility features for integration or integrations that can sort of help with that. So I hope that can help address that answer, or that question that came through, and I appreciate the other questions that are coming through. So back to social media and socialization. Social media at an online event will be, for obvious reasons, critical to the success. Social media can spread the word and create excitement around the event, open sponsorship opportunities, allow non-attendees to engage with the event, and allow for more meaningful and unique engagement opportunities, making a home run with providing the experiences people will hopefully talk about for days after your event. So when you're mapping out your marketing strategy, I want to you to think in 3 phases, as I've outlined here: pre-event, during, and post-event. For pre-event, consider making press kits or social media kits. Use unique hashtags to help bolster your event's social media presence. Joe is going to elaborate more on overall engagement during events, but consider how social media can come into play with things like Everwall, social media photo contests, Snapchat filters, Instagram story filters. And then after your event, you want to make sure you continue the conversations and maximize your engagement. Offer video highlights, publish testimonials of people who attended, or create infographics recapping what the benefits of the information and the benefits of the attendees and their networks. So on the next slide, I just put a couple options and examples of how you can integrate social media into your event. So on the left, we've got Snapchat filters. In the middle, you've got a Facebook profile frame. In the middle right, this is a Twitter takeover, an example of a Twitter takeover. So maybe find an influencer or popular figure within your sector or industry. And then actually the last one on the right here is an example from one of our clients, Delaware Changing Lives. They actually created social partnerships by leveraging a private high school in our area to facilitate online training and meditation sessions. So now that you've kind of got an understanding of how you want to strategize your social media, Joe's going to talk a little bit more about the actual broader engagement opportunity of an online event.
Thanks, Whit. Yeah, taking action and engaging is, I just want to take a deeper dive here. And you may have seen these social media walls at some live events. They'll be pushed up on the screen, and people will be using the hashtag and tweeting during actual in-person events. But they're equally as powerful on virtual and live virtual events as well. If you look at the screen grab on the left and the bottom of that page, you can see leaderboards. These are people who are using the hashtag and rising up to the top if they're engaging the most, whether they're using the most tweets with your hashtag or they have that greatest reach. And there's a lot of ways to be creative. So what you're really doing is starting to gamify engagement with your virtual events, which could be really fun and can drive a lot of neat fundraising ideas. And you can use virtual leaderboards pre-event, pre-virtual event, during the virtual event, and post-event as well. The other important thing to do is encourage engagement. In the middle piece there with the three mobile phones on Facebook, you can ask attendees to introduce themselves. You can ask questions periodically. You can hold polls. Facebook is great for that. They have a really good tool. The polls can be verbatim. They can be emojis, but it makes it fun and it makes it engaging. And that can all lead to different ways to get your audiences to interact with your organization, but themselves as well. And you could even do breakout sessions. If you're on Zoom, you could break out into specific rooms and have different sessions for folks, just like a regular conference. So engagement, it's not just on your video platform. You can automate and personalize your engagement from promotion to registration to post-event to building relationships with attendees and marketing them all along the way. So we use a platform called HubSpot. So that basically the way HubSpot works, it's a CRM, customer relationship management platform that also can run campaigns, manage your site, manage your events, manage fundraising, all in one platform. And if you can do that, it's just another great way to integrate all these other elements of your live event. So pre and post event too, you can begin to engage your audiences and continue that conversation. And the great thing about virtual events is you can gather more information from folks as they register online than you might at a live event. And by doing that, you can have a lot more engaging interactions post-event as well, which can lead to more fundraising and impact as folks engage with you through email and social and everything else that may have spurred from that initial virtual event. So we're going to take a look at a few different ways to actually fundraise now through your virtual event. So pre-pandemic, nonprofits could get away with having their fundraising initiatives run in relative silos. The more advanced nonprofits would have them tied together, some better than others. But now it's paramount to really start piecing these different platforms together, as Kyle mentioned earlier, especially when it comes to virtual fundraising. Linking PayPal to Eventbrite and Zoom. You can do that now, and you may even have a free event, but when people register for the free event, you can plug in PayPal just to get people to donate. So they're coming for free, but they're donating. And they could even pay when they register for some of these virtual events on some of these virtual platforms. And you could charge money to join a Zoom registration. So there's a lot of different ways to incorporate these different platforms that may have been used separately in the past, but by connecting them, you're opening up different channels to really start driving your fundraising to your virtual event. On the next slide, these are some platforms that you may consider, and it's important to look at the channel and the payment model that works best for you. So Eventbrite, for example, it's a great event-based platform that can fit right into your fundraising or your website. They charge 2% of, if you're raising funds through the virtual events, and 79 cents for per transaction, and then there's some premium charges as well. If you have a free event, which a lot of nonprofits do have, there's no charge, and that might be a great way to get started. Give Lively is a popular platform that you can plug into your virtual events, and they're well known for their text-to-donate program. They're free, but you'll have to pay a third-party processor. So if you sync in Stripe or PayPal, you would have to pay those fees. And then Connect to Give, TechSoup product. Also, they have text giving, there's auctions, and there's a real affordable transaction fee related with those. The next slide. Continuing with fundraising, again, it's important to see what platforms your audiences are using and if those platforms will sync with your site and your social media. Venmo, for example, it's a favorite among millennials, and that might be the platform you choose because that's your target audience. PayPal, that's classic. Everyone's familiar with PayPal. You could use that. And Square, which you've probably seen when you've gone into restaurants or shopping, but it's great for your nonprofit, for your virtual event, if you're selling products or you're selling branded keepsakes with your nonprofit's name on it. So all these things work together, and it's really about what virtual platform you're using, who your audience is, and the best way to communicate with them. And then in terms of fundraising, what's the best channel? So we really like to take a look at all these different opportunities. So to tie it all together, Kyle will recap today's discussion and provide some more real-world examples of how this all fits together.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Just a quick recap, and we'll kind of rush through this a little bit because I know there's a ton of questions coming in. We want to make sure we address many of those. 4 steps here we kind of talked through and covered, planning, choosing your platforms, integrating your channels, and then taking action. And we know that if you, just by some of our examples early on and then we'll go through shortly here, if you follow these 4 key steps, some things we can expect as far as outcomes are a more cohesive strategy. So not only this one-off event, but how this can be applied to your future events. So think virtual counterparts to live events. So maybe you do have a 5K, but you also want to have a virtual 5K that accompanies that. Or maybe you have micro events throughout the year that lead up to your big gala or your big fundraiser. So you kind of use some of these ideas that we'll talk through today there as well. You could also hope to expand communications and your capacity. So think better tools, better integration, automations, better scalability as a result of you going through these exercises. Apply what you learn, and you might see an opportunity to increase efficiency with the tools and processes you already have in place or the ones you're putting in place. Things like automating more so you can better connect and integrate your systems are going to let the technology do the work for you and let you get back to making your impact. We also think you should be able to improve your website and your stakeholder journey as part of this. So one of the first things we touched on was getting that website out there, having possibly a landing page or something that's there for this event, but you're actually using that as part of this conversion journey, so to speak. So building on these enhanced integrations, expanding your digital footprint, you're going to be better connected, and you should be providing a more cohesive user experience kind of across the board going forward. And then we know you'll have a more empowered staff, showing the outcomes of launching and holding your first successful virtual event. We expect that your audience is going to feel more connected, right? And your staff should too. So, if you launch a Facebook group and you're able to have your staff kind of engage more over time, that's going to start to tie them into your audience, and it's going to give them more of a sense of ownership, so to speak. You're definitely going to have increased your reach if you follow the steps that we kind of talked through, and that's going to provide an easy-to-use process for your audience kind of going forward. We also expect that you're going to see like a lasting halo effect from a lot of this, as like the conversations that we see in virtual events are continued and relevant well after the event launches. So, if you meet somebody at a live event, at a meetup, and maybe you get their business card, you're going to follow up with them, send them an email, probably just reaching out over email, maybe you call them, but you're kind of sitting there waiting for a response. In the virtual events, as you guys can see, even in this webinar, that initial digital point of contact is made in real time. So maybe you reached out through chat, maybe you connected right on LinkedIn, maybe there's a comment thread on a Facebook Live video, whatever the case is, that icebreaker that you're waiting to happen has already happened. It's a lot easier to engage sometimes behind like a computer screen, for example. But we don't want you to just take our word for some of this. We covered a case study early on, but we wanted to outline some examples to kind of get your creative minds flowing and seeing how others have done it well from some events that have done this well in the past that you could think of for planning your next event.
Great, thanks, Kyle. One of a great example is the American Heart Association. They've always been innovative, and they shared with us the American Heart Association in Greater Washington had a big event. It's National Walking Day in D.C. And of course, it got canceled due to COVID. And what they had was a corporate challenge. All the big businesses and organizations and corporations were going to show up on this day. So what they did, and they had to act quickly, was they personally reached out. They announced it quickly that this was changing. They reached out by phone. They reached out by email. And they pulled together an event for all these corporations to do a National Walking Day for their employees at home. So all the employees of each one of these corporations were challenged to take steps, record their steps, and then submit them into the American Heart Association. And by doing this, it was a great way for these corporations and organizations to really connect and engage with their employees. So it was a great benefit for them, for their HR, and also as a healthy initiative overall. And what happened was they got 28 companies and organizations registered compared to 10 the year before, and they actually had over 2.5 million steps taken that day. Very successful. And then they didn't stop there. While people were taking their steps, they were invited to submit photos and post on social media. So what American Heart Association did was they were curating these photos and images and positive feedback that were coming back from the sponsors and creating little videos or stories on social media and posting them as well. And that drove even more engagement. So, another example of being super innovative and providing, an impact, not just for the sponsors, but for the employees and the community, and turning it around on a dime. So hats off to the Heart Association. And next, Kyle is going to go through a few more other great case studies.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. The other one, I think that many of you probably are aware of, that N10 was canceled kind of completely, but many of the organizations that were scheduled to present were able to hold those sessions virtually, so to continue to impart their education or knowledge or feedback across the space. And what we really liked about how N10 did this was they were able to communicate. They communicated very early, and they communicated often and across multiple channels. They used their website and their email to promote the virtual sessions. Like they had, I saw virtual booths promoted for like Kila and Mobilize. And one thing that you can see that these organizations have done pre and since N10, now they have, we talked about earlier, more of that evergreen content that would not have likely existed otherwise. If you went to a session, maybe N10 recorded it and they might use it as a soundbite, but now these organizations actually have their own archive of the content they put out there. Another benefit to what they did was they helped kind of connect these communities. So you can kind of create these virtual or digital cohorts now as a result of that wouldn't probably have existed otherwise from just a live in-person event. We know they probably were able to attract like additional sessions, and they actually had on their website, like if you'd like to contribute during post-event, they were asked for additional sessions, additional exhibitors, showcases that probably wouldn't have maybe submitted their event in time or their session in time, or didn't get chosen because there's a limited space. And then many organizations, they probably had to think about where they would travel to N10. Was it out of their driving distance? What was the cost, especially with the organization budgets, what they are in many cases. It's a great event to go to, but sometimes it's a lot to bite off. So this virtual version of this opened those organizations up to that opportunity so they could actually engage and consume with this powerful content that exists through N10. And they really placed a special emphasis this time when they canceled it, or when they, repositioned it, but also in general about how it's really all about the people, not just the technology we use. So, how are they still able to serve the people? How are they making the right decision for their people and their audience? And how are they able to continue to engage with those people? We had some more case studies and stuff in here, but there's just some general examples we can go over. And I know we want to get to questions and answers, but if you just think about other things that have been canceled or repurposed as virtual, like the Adobe Summit was canceled or postponed, Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference is now not an event, Google's Cloud Conference, all of these have either gone online or changed in some way. And I know we had I don't know, Whit, if you think we've got time, but just to kind of give a quick overview of, a sample event that we would talk through, and then we can jump right into Q&A, or if you're ready to just kind of take some of these questions, I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, I can briefly cover this. So we had a client that hosted a while back a guest bartender happy hour fundraiser, and as we were working through this webinar content, I thought it would be kind of an interesting exercise for me to figure out how would I make this into an online event. So, stepping back and really focusing on what the two main objectives of a guest bartending happy hour, right? It's a fundraising event and it's a social networking event. So who are the people that you need to make sure you have involved there, right? You still have to get your guest bartenders. Maybe have them prepare to make their own and train people or teach people how to make that cocktail at a specific time. Then you have to decide where the venue is. If it's going to be on a private Facebook group, or do we want to have it, hosted on Zoom? Zoom may work better if we're considering the fact that we need to address the social networking component, right? So we can have breakout rooms designated for particular topics or interests that are pertinent to that nonprofit's organization, and have a facilitator within each of those breakout rooms, maybe managing or driving conversation and driving that network, that sort of natural conversation feel that you would have at a bar or a restaurant. And then ensuring that along the way you're always integrating the fundraising opportunities. So making sure that maybe it's a Venmo transaction that bartenders are requesting during their 15-minute segment of teaching you how to make the best dry martini. Or maybe you have a raffles and giveaway section where people can purchase a certain number of raffle tickets, and maybe you have the sales responsibility put onto the bartender. The bartender who sells the most amount of raffle tickets within their 15-minute section, they also win something. And then always, making sure that you're utilizing your social media and other social networks and online communications channels to continue the conversation afterward and drive that networking component, that relationship building that you guys create, that would have created in that environment, and keep that messaging going forward and really providing a value during a time right now where people are having a hard time being socially distanced from one another. So hopefully that can give you inspire some creativity, and maybe you'll decide to host your own guest bartending event online. So I'm going to pass it off to Joe, and he's going to talk a little bit about what we have available through TechSoup as Tapp Network.
Great. Thanks, Whit. Thanks, everybody. We hope today sparks some creative ideas and a roadmap on how you can quickly and successfully pivot to online events and virtual marketing. And we know there's no one size that fits all, but there are best practices. And I think the best way to continue to stay up to date with best practices, follow TechSoup, follow their social media, reading the blogs, and it just becomes a great resource for all the different tools and technologies that can support organizations going virtual. So if you're interested in learning more, we'll send out this presentation. And also in partnership with TechSoup, we've created some really great grader tools. There's a website wellness assessment tool that's free. We have a digital marketing assessment tool that's free, as well as website consultation services and digital marketing consultations and services that are free or for a small donation. So if you want to continue the conversation, please visit TechSoup and go online, and we can continue to try to provide support and help along the way. And just want to thank everybody for your time. And if you have any questions, we'll open up the Q&A now.
Great. Thanks so much, Team Tapp. Really appreciate it. And thanks so much to all the questions that we've received. We've received over 700 and counting questions, so we're doing our absolute best to try to address them as best as possible. But please know that we do look at every single question, and we will be using that to fuel future webinar content. I know there's just such extreme need for a variety of situations from, I see things from, of course, fundraising to live concerts to virtual conferences and more. So many different scenarios that you're looking for support, and we will review these questions and from that create some more specific content to address those. But let's jump into some of the questions that I did flag, and I try to prioritize these by questions that were most asked in one way or another, and that will serve the broader audience here. So I'm so sorry if we won't be able to answer all of your questions today on the line, but again, we will look at all of these and we will do our best to get back to you individually. And with that, so Q&A, it does say use a chat box, but in this case, it's the Q&A box. So, still go ahead and put in your questions, please do. And in the meantime, let's kick off. So something that came up quite a bit was about security. And that is real, right? It is hacker's paradise right now with so much going online, particularly our events. And so there were some concerns about security issues that have been publicly made available and known by Zoom and other platforms. And our response there is that we always recommend due diligence in selecting the tool that's going to be most appropriate for your needs. So there's definitely ways and suggestions that we have for making Zoom and other platforms more secure, and that includes requiring Zoom logins and password protection. Passwords are huge and can really help lock that down a bit more. But we also recommend looking at all the options and ensure that you're selecting tools that are appropriate given your organization, constituents, and needs. And just while we're on the topic of security real quick, we did a webinar. You can watch the replay. We'll include the link in our post-event email, but it's all about keeping your nonprofit's system secure while working remotely. And a lot of things in that webinar are going to apply to online events too, at least what you need to do to make sure that your Wi-Fi is secure along with other things. So great questions. Thank you for answering that. Security is definitely an issue and something we're concerned about too, but there are some best practices that you can employ to try to make sure that you're protecting yourself and your constituents. All right, so let's move to another question here. Let's see, Tapp team, do you guys have recommendations in terms of charging fee costs for participants for an online event versus an in-person one?
Yes, I don't mind taking that. I think it has to, I'm just make sure I get the question right. So that's like if you were going to charge for, let's say, a gala, right, and you wanted to turn that into a virtual event, how would you update the cost? And then do we have some general recommendations? Is that correct, I guess?
Mm-hmm, yep.
Sounds good. Yeah, so every event is definitely going to be different, but oftentimes one of the benefits of the virtual event for the attendees is the reduced cost of that, or sometimes there's no cost, and then it's finding a way to either fundraise, collect donations, hold an auction or something of that nature to raise those funds as part of that virtual event. But oftentimes we talk about things like registration fees, and then make sure that the registration amount matches what they get for the registration fee. So if there are prizes, the registration fee goes into the cost of collected about the cost of the prizes, or if they get a package. So if you think about the virtual 5K, for example, that Hoppy run, they had an optional registration fee, so it was free to register and free to participate. But if you wanted to get the prize, or you wanted to get the registration package, which included like a T-shirt and things of that nature, there was a cost for that. So it kind of has to be brought into what the cost of the event is to hold, and then what the value is of what you're providing to your audience.
Great. Thanks for that. Another question that I saw come up quite a bit in various ways was about how to manage shifting to a virtual environment with a small team, and particularly with a small team that might not have any IT or technical expertise.
Joe, do you want to take that, or I'm happy to as well?
Sure. A lot of our clients are small nonprofits. Sometimes it's just one or two people, and there's a couple ways to go about it. If you want to do a live event, there is Zoom. Take the security into consideration. Facebook Live. There's a couple different ways to really do this cost effectively with tools that are already out there and can be self-taught. We provide consultation services through TechSoup to talk and walk people through them as well. But it really depends on the size of your event and the tools that you have in place. If you have an email marketing list and you have enough social media followers, take a look at what you have and do an audit of how you can reach all these folks, and then look at the system or platform that you can drive them to that's the most cost effective. And if it's short term, that would be a different answer than if it's an event that's 6 to 12 months away, because you'll have more time to plan on it. So each case is a little different, but there's free tools and cost-effective ways to do this quickly, and other options if these events, if you have more time to plan for them.
Great, thanks for that, Joe. And this came up again in multiple ways, but about how to engage senior citizens and older donors who might not be as tech savvy. What tips, recommendations do you have in making sure they're feeling supported and able to connect to online events?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's super relevant here too. And something that really goes into like the planning and platform selection stage. So really understanding your audience, looking at who you have in there and who you're trying to serve, and being sure that the virtual, we'll call it quote unquote virtual counterpart is sufficient. So we do know that many times that if you were going to have something in person that would be better fit for an older audience, perhaps a disabled audience, or maybe even a younger audience with their parents involved, it might not be, you're not going to have a one-to-one type of trade-off here. So it would be looking at the different platforms and different solutions that are available. So I've seen things before where we've seen like radio contests. We can still call it quote unquote virtual event because you're knowing where your audience is, knowing maybe that they're listening to local radio stations. We've seen snail mail campaigns to accompany email campaigns that we know that physical mail might reach someone more easily, and then prompt them to respond in another way. Anytime we can, we try to tie them back digitally though, so give them an easy to navigate to URL, or even drive them to Facebook. The quote unquote elderly audience is very often on Facebook these days, and they're savvy enough to use the Facebook group, follow the nonprofits or the organizations they support, or maybe their alma mater, and then use that as that platform. So without, as we mentioned earlier, keep this as frictionless as possible, so that you're not having to have someone learn a new system or learn a new platform, especially in that example. So it's very audience specific too.
Great, thank you, Kyle. And another question here, let's see, specifically it says, how do we know we have enough time to set up a virtual event? So in this case, their event, and this is from Heather, was scheduled June 13th. So how much time is enough time for successfully scheduling a virtual event?
Yeah, I think that's just so there. I think that's subjective too. What's important, I think, is is the juice worth the squeeze, and we see happen very often is a lot of people try to overdo it, so they want to they end up biting off more than they can chew, so they're underprepared because they're trying to over-prepare. So again, like that planning stage is so vitally important. So maybe making sure that you have enough and it's done well is more important than trying to accomplish every single goal that was originally part of your in-person event. So if you think of the expected outcomes of your in-person event, and maybe it was to raise $50,000, to have 500 attendees, and to have 5 sponsors in tow. If you look back and say, okay, well, this is going to cost me $40,000 to raise $50,000. In reality, you only need to raise $10,000 or $15,000 to you do better than break even or better than profit on your virtual event. So what can you do? What complementary or supplementary pieces are available for doing that? Whether that's fundraising, offering sponsorships. I think I might have mentioned on the Hoppy run as an example. They were actually able to drive more lower dollar sponsors as part of that 5K than going out and finding 1 or 2 large donors or sponsors as they do locally. So getting creative in that way and knowing what's needed there. And then, for sure, based on the time, so I think N10 is a good example of being able to pivot quickly because they were a few weeks out and had to make that decision, and they weren't, clearly they weren't able to take their entire event, so they brought a pared down version of that by tapping into their partners and the exhibitors that they had in place, and then executing that way. So it's somewhat subjective. If you're fortunate enough to be planning a virtual event instead of a live event because you think that's the right path to go, or if it's complementary to a live event, then we always recommend having everything done in place, planned out, ready to go, probably launching at least 6 weeks out. So you're probably planning at least 60 to 90 days out, depending on what the logistics are like. But the reality of some of these things is that you need to be able to pivot quickly, and that's where we really think like technology and the planning piece can be your friend.
Yes, and just iterate as you go along, right? Sometimes just getting started is half the battle, and the more you do them, the more seamless it becomes. I wouldn't say necessarily completely easy, but it becomes less unknown and of a mystery. So another question here was around evergreen content. Some attendees wanted to know, what is evergreen content?
I can answer this one if you guys.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, sure. So evergreen content is content that's designed to always be used. It's not tied to a specific event. It can pretty much be used at any time, and it's always relevant. Compare that to topical, content, which is specific to a date or a time or a particular event, right? So, your event announcements and the invitations, those would be topical content that you're maybe posting on your social media. But you can always get evergreen content out of events, right? Like testimonials, getting some information why people love the organization. So evergreen content, basically, in long answer, is content that can be used at any time. It's always going to be relevant.
Great. And a follow-up question to that, there were some questions about icebreakers. What are some good icebreakers that you guys have seen in events or that you like to use in events to get people engaged and connecting with one another?
I'll let Rick get this.
I already jumped in on this one. Yeah. I guess I'm known as like the hippie in the company. It depends on how granola you want to get. There's simple stuff like you can still do 2 truths and a lie. That's a great one. There's you could maybe do 20 questions. You could do I'm trying to think of some other ones. Asking maybe something as simple as like, if you could have a superpower, what would it be and why? Some of the simple, open-ended question forms of icebreakers that are out there can still be sort of transitioned to an online and virtual event. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks for that, Whit. All right. So, we keep seeing more questions coming in, and that's fantastic. Again, thank you for everyone who's asked questions, and we will get a transcript of all of these and look at every single one and do our best to get back to you. We'll also include resource links. I see a lot of questions asking about where to find certain things. So certainly the slides, the replay of this webinar will be included, and we will also include a list of resources to a lot of the things that you heard on today's webinar. So again, thanks for your questions, and we really do take time to look at them, and that helps us create new webinar content and other content across TechSoup as well. Let's see. Okay, and I think with that, we are going to start to wrap. So if you can share just like one thing that you're excited to share with your team, that you're excited to maybe start testing out or trying, share that one thing that you learned that you're going to take with you into your organization. And just add that right to the Q&A box. All right. And we'll also have a post-event survey. It would be wonderful if you could just take some time. It takes maybe like 5-10 seconds tops. And again, that really helps us prepare future content for TechSoup. So yes, that feedback makes a difference. And we have some upcoming webinars as well next week. You can see our lineup here. We'll also include this link of all of our webinars, both coming up and our archived webinars. So take a look here. We've got a lot of great content. And with that, I would love if we could have a parting song from Mr. Witt.
Yes, sure. So long, farewell, I'll be to say adieu, 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 to you and you and you. There you go. Thank you all for coming.
Bravo!
I hope that was good enough.
Absolutely.
That was so great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Tapp team. We really appreciate you sharing all this knowledge with us. And thanks again to everyone at TechSoup who helped facilitate with the chat, and of course to our community with all your questions and your support and continued engagement and drive to serve your community. So with that, we'll part and we'll see you soon. Take care, everyone.